Yeah, what a draft that was too. Nelson and then Braden Smith in the second when you were with the Colts. So yeah, what I do want to talk about that. Just to cap off the Raiders conversation. Lee Smith just fit so well too with the whole identity of that offense. Because I remember, like I said, 2015 or so was when I started watching. So, Gabe Jackson, Donald Penn on the left side, and then you sign Kelechi Osemele, and then Gabe moves to the right. Now all of a sudden you have Hudson, Gabe, KO, and Penn, and then Lee Smith at tight end. I mean, that's one of the most underrated lines of the last 10 years or so, in my opinion, just in terms of finishing, physically imposing your will. Like, that was an incredible line to watch.
That 2016 year, like you said, you
The
had
16
Donald
year,
Penn at left tackle. That was the first year that KO was there at left guard.
yeah.
Rodney Hudson, I don't think that Rodney gets nearly enough credit for being one of the best centers to play. Smart, tough. I mean, he's arguably one of the smartest players I've been around. Then you had Gabe Jackson, who was another massive man, and then playing right tackle was Austin Howard, who was another huge human being out of Northern Iowa. It was like 6'7", 370.
Massive guy.
Yeah, massive. And then you put Lee out there. I mean, we had a big team across the board. We were a massive team, and that was something that was kind of the philosophy of the organization. Jack Del Rio was the head coach. Mike Tice was the line coach, and it goes back to those old Parcells kind of philosophies of get as big as men as possible because the season's long. It's a physical game, and one of the quotes that always gets said is, "Hey, as the game gets longer and the season gets longer, it goes, big men don't shrink, but fast guys get tired and get slower." So that was kind of the philosophy of it. Hey, just be big,
love that,
and be physically imposing and punishing on the team, and that has long, effects over the course of a long game, a long season, to where you can kind of you're sturdier, you're more durable, you're rugged. And that's kind of the philosophy behind it. And that was something that I still kind of incorporate it into my evaluation of guys, or my evaluation of players, is just their true physical size, not necessarily the scale weight, but just what are they like structurally? Are they big naturally?
Their frame.
Yeah, I look at a lot of those things when it comes time to evaluate, not only draft picks but free agents. I look past some of the scale weight and the arm length and start looking at joint sizes and body mass and things like that. Are they truly big men? And that's
right.
Things that really I kind of started learning when I was there in Oakland.
Yeah, that makes total sense based on how those lines were on film, at least. So just had a lot of fun watching. I reminisce on that a lot. I actually got to sit down with Donald Penn and Kelechi Osemele a few years ago for my Substack, and we watched. I had all the cut ups from 16 and even some 17 and stuff, and we watched it together. That was really cool for me.
And then in 17, we had Marshawn Lynch, so now you had a big, powerful back.
Right. Those Raiders, there was just so much just tenacity and size, and just with those lines and stuff, it was cool. Another guy that kind of, I think, fit this mantra a little bit, kind of going back a little to 2014 with your time with the Lions, Dominic Raiola, a guy I never really got to like study on film, but I always kind of knew who he was growing up and stuff. But he was kind of like that too, wasn't he? And just in terms of just total finisher, total set the tone kind of guy.
Dom, wow. I had the real privilege of working with some really good centers, and I think if you go back over the last couple of decades, those two guys in particular, I'd put smarts wise and toughness wise and overall playing ability up there with just about anybody. I had the privilege of being on Dom for 2 years, and Dom was your stereotypical offensive lineman. He had a wild hair in him, but you loved it on game day. But the thing that kind of got lost in all that was how smart he was, what he had seen in his career. There would be times where he may flip the protection, kind of like as a coach, like, what did you see there? And he'd be like, yeah, I remember we played against so-and-so this year ago, and they were doing this, and they brought this, and I saw the safety doing this, so I thought, and I turned it, and you're like, holy cow, you're like, almost like you got to rewind the tape a couple times, and then you see it, and he saw it in real time.
Yeah, wow.
It was just, cool. It was, his smarts was just so amazing, but also he was an absolute maniac when it came to training and preparing. He was a guy that always lifted heavy. all throughout the year from the beginning to the very end, and he was always doing extra. He was the first guy in the building, and that's probably why he played so long.
Yeah, it makes sense.
You had the mentality, the smarts, and just the the, the, the willingness to just go beyond in the preparation, physically and mentally. It was just like that was something really cool to be around and to watch and to see, and then obviously getting to spend a year in the room with him. It was just like now I'm in the room and seeing how he saw things and how he saw things on tape and how he communicated. He was the true captain of the line. I mean, he said something, everybody listened. He said it with the utmost confidence. I mean, he knew what he was talking about. The guys knew he knew what he was talking about. And they listened, and it was a really cool to see a guy lead like that because you knew he did everything into the preparation. So it was just really cool to see that, just how his mind worked in the game. It was really cool to spend that year with him in the room.
And what was he, like 6'4"? He wasn't the biggest guy, was he?
No, he was probably a 6'3" guy, but he was a real sturdy body
Sturdy,
guy.
yeah.
He was a 300 plus guy. I wouldn't say he was a 320 guy. I don't think he was that big.
Somewhere in the middle.
I think he was like a 305.
Yeah.
310 at his heaviest. But you look at his body, and there wasn't like a bunch of body.
Just stout.
He was a very stout.
Yeah.
I don't want to say squatty because he wasn't short, but he was sturdily built. I mean, coming from Hawaii, and his cousin was Olin Kreutz, another tough guy.
Man, Olin Kreutz, yeah.
Yeah, so like that's kind of his lineage. He had a younger brother, Donovan, who was a really good college player, and I believe he's the line coach at Nebraska now, where Dom played. But like you just look at how he's built. He had great leverage. He was very strong. He could run. So he had like. People say, "Oh, this guy projects as a center." That's kind of the body you see, but he was not a stubby guy. He wasn't a short arm guy per se. But he was, when you look at him, you're like, "That's a lineman, square jaw, just kind of yoked up."
Yeah.
So get out. Like I said, I was there toward the end of his career, but I had plenty of opportunities to see him play, earlier in his career, and he played the game the way you want your guys to play.